Hello, everybody. How you doing today? All right. My name is Tim McCarthy, and I'm in a hurry, too, so let me get right to it. I want to offer 3 lessons from history today. How do we advance this? We're going, all right, there we go. 3 lessons from history today. This comes from studying for 3 decades, studying, teaching, and writing about the history of social justice movements here in the United States. The first lesson is conflict creates change. Lesson number 2 is that progress is paradoxical. And lesson number 3 is that you can't be neutral on a moving train. Let me begin with a quote from 1963. The late, great James Baldwin spoke to a group of teachers. And he starts by saying, let me begin by saying we are living through a dangerous time. Everyone in this room in one way or another is aware of that. We are in a revolutionary situation, no matter how unpopular that word has become in this country. Here's the prescient part. This society in which we live is desperately menaced, not by Khrushchev, but from within. To any citizen of this country who figures himself as responsible, and particularly those of you who deal with the minds and hearts of young people, must be prepared to go for broke. Or to put it another way, you must understand that in the attempt to correct so many generations of bad faith and cruelty, when it is operating not only in the classroom but in society, you will meet the most fantastic, the most brutal, the most determined resistance. And there is no point in pretending that this won't happen. We live in similarly dangerous times. I'm a historian, and I am struck by how often history is in the crosshairs of the culture war. Banned books, controlled curriculum, assaults on critical race theory, African American history, LGBTQ history, the word gay, you name it. All of this is under assault. What is also under assault is the truth that these histories and these frameworks for understanding, these critical frameworks for understanding, give us the tools to change the world. Just this weekend, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert said that Joe Biden's loan forgiveness program is going to help him redistribute government funds to fund lesbian dance theory. I wish she had checked in with me before she talked about this, because I found that the spring semester course on lesbian dance practice was far more resonant in my own life. So lesson number 1, conflict creates change. Too often we shy away from change. We want to be civil, we want to have consensus, and we think that conflict is a dirty word. Conflict can be scary, it can be treacherous, it can even be deadly, but conflict can also produce some of the greatest changes we've seen in history. How many of you have heard of the Civil War? People say to me all the time that we've never been more divided than we've been in this moment in American history. And I go back and I say, have you heard of the Civil War? Have you read the congressional debates over slavery in the 19th century? I have. Have you read the notes from the Second Continental Congress that produced the Declaration of Independence? I have. Have you read the notes from the Constitutional Convention? I have. Those conflicts. Founding fathers are not known for their stunning diversity, and yet they were full of conflict, regional conflicts and geopolitical conflicts and racial and identity conflicts and material and religious conflicts. They were full of conflict. When people think about the Civil War, oftentimes they think back to this terrible time in American history, and certainly it was a treacherous time, threatened to undo the nation itself. 750,000 people died in that conflict. But you know what? 4 million people walked out of slavery into a new dawn of freedom. The Civil War gave us the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery, the 14th Amendment defining equal citizenship and equal protection of citizenship under the law, and the 15th Amendment extended voting rights in an unprecedented way. That conflict also produced change we can believe in, change that gave birth to the first real attempt to establish and perpetuate and sustain a multiracial democracy in the United States. The second lesson I'd like to speak a minute about is that progress is paradoxical. And what do I mean by that? Going back to that period of Civil War, we know that the period after the Civil War, a very short period of about a decade or so, was a period of Reconstruction. a time where the nation attempted, some of the nation, attempted to reconstruct itself after war, but also to make good on those ideals of equality and freedom and rights of citizenship that had been promised by the founders but had never been fully realized by the vast majority of people in the country. The Reconstruction period was a period of unprecedented expansion of those things, and yet at the fall of Reconstruction, the rise of a white supremacist order, a new white supremacist order, the creation of the sophisticated system of segregation under Jim Crow, the rise of racial terror lynching, thousands of them over the periods of the coming decades. That was a moment where that reaction, that response to the expansion of freedom and equality and democracy was ready to attack, to roll back the progress that had come from that conflict itself. We see all sorts of examples of this throughout history, this paradox of progress, where rights and freedoms and equalities and all of these things that we fight for are expanded. And then the forces of reaction, of counter-revolution, of prejudice and resistance to all of those things come flying back in the face of it. We are always simultaneously in moments of potential progress and moments of ascendant reaction. And we need to figure out where we line up in the history of whatever time we live in. And the third lesson that I'd like to end with today is you can't be neutral on a moving train. Last week would have been the 100th birthday of my late great mentor, Howard Zinn, the famous people's historian. And Howard said that you can't be neutral on a moving train, and what he meant by that is that history is constantly moving. Those forces of progress and reaction are always swirling around us, calling us in, contextualizing how we live and how we relate to each other and how we don't. They help to explain not just that we haven't gotten along, but why we don't yet get along. But they call us into history. I say to my students all the time that history books will be written in each era and each age, and each history book has an index, and the important things in the book are listed in the index. Where will each of you be in the index of the history books of future times? That's our challenge, to lean into the conflict, to understand that that conflict creates change, to be ready for the paradoxes that fly in the face of progress, and to not be neutral, to not allow yourselves to fall into the trap of neutrality, which can become a form of complicity, to not to erase your subjectivities, to achieve some kind of false fiction of objectivity. We want to learn how to change the world, but we also want to change the world. Welcome to Hugsy. Let's get to work.